wind had a voice that night. Not the usual whistle through the pines, but a low, drawn-out moan, like the forest itself was weeping. I froze, the flashlight slipping from my grip, and somewhere deep among the twisted trunks, a faint, high-pitched sobbing answered. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was wrong. I tried to tell myself it was the wind again, just the wind. But then the sound shifted, moving closer, weaving between the trees. The shadows bent in ways shadows shouldn't. My breath caught. Something or someone was watching. A branch cracked behind me. I spun, heart hammering, empty, nothing but the trembling leaves. Then, from the darkness just beyond my reach, I heard it clearly. A voice whispering my name. I ran. The forest seemed endless, yet every step brought me back to the same clearing. The sobbing was louder now, echoing from every direction. Impossible to locate, impossible to escape. My own pulse sounded like a drumbeat in the quiet. And then I saw it. A tree, ancient and gnarled, its bark slick with dark moisture. From its trunk, a small, pale hand pushed out, clawing through as if the forest itself was bleeding. A whisper hissed in my ear, "You shouldn't be here." The sobbing didn't stop that night, not really. Even after I staggered out of the trees and into the trembling glow of my car's headlights, it followed me. Every time I blinked, I could still see the twisted shadows curling between the trunks, reaching for me. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The moment my head hit the pillow, I imagined pale hands pushing through the walls, the wind twisting into voices, whispering my name. I'm not brave. I'm not one to chase ghost stories or venture into the woods for fun. I'm just me, an ordinary person living an ordinary life in a small Appalachian town. But the forest behind the old Miller place was different. Everyone said so, though no one would say why aloud. It started weeks before with the missing dogs. Old Mrs. Harlan's collie vanished without a trace. Then her cat. Her neighbors whispered, but when I asked, they just shrugged and looked away. Best not to go near the woods after dark, one said, eyes darting to the trees that loomed like a wall behind our homes. They said it jokingly, but their voices were tight with fear. I didn't take it seriously. Not until the crying started. It was the day I went to pick up firewood for the coming winter. The forest was quiet, deceptively calm. The sunlight filtered through the skeletal branches, dusting the fallen leaves in gold. And yet I felt eyes on me, though no one was there. My steps on the brittle leaves echoed unnaturally. I froze when a single soft sob drifted from the deeper shadows. "Hello?" I called, trying to laugh it off. My voice sounded weak. I swallowed. "Is someone there?" No answer. Only the sobbing, closer now. That's when I noticed the trees were wrong. The trunks twisted unnaturally, as though they had been bent over in pain. The bark had scratches that looked suspiciously like fingernails, deep grooves that had no business being there. Leaves quivered in windless pockets of air, whispering faint cries I couldn't place. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. Something pushed at the edge of my vision, a flash of pale skin, or maybe just sunlight on bark. I blinked, and it was gone. I turned to leave. My heart beat loud, my breath shallow. And then I heard it, faint, deliberate, human. "Don't go." The voice was weak, pleading, distant, yet terrifyingly close. I swear I could feel it in my chest. I ran. I don't remember how far, only the crunch of leaves beneath my boots, the snapping of branches, the echoing sobs that twisted into shrieks. When I finally reached the road, the forest seemed normal again, ordinary. But the sound followed me home that night. Over the next few days, things grew stranger. My cat disappeared. My neighbor, Mr. Crowley, swore he saw someone in his yard, crouched under the oak at the edge of the forest, pale, hunched, crying. But when he stepped closer, nothing was there. The whole town seemed quieter, watchful, like everyone knew something they couldn't say. I started seeing them, faces in the trees, small, desperate faces pressed against bark, mouths moving in silent screams. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself fear was playing tricks. But the bruises on the bark looked too deliberate, too cruel to be random. And then I found something worse, a journal. Old, leather-bound, tucked beneath a loose floorboard in the Miller house, abandoned for decades. Its pages were brittle, smelling of rot and mildew. The writing was uneven, frantic. Whoever had written it had lived here, in this town, long before I was born. The forest cries. It hungers. The trees remember what we've done. Listen to it or it will take you. I stared at the words, cold sweat dripping down my spine. That night I tried to sleep. Tried to convince myself the sobbing, the faces, the scratches were illusions. But when I closed my eyes, I saw hands pushing through walls again. Heard the whisper, "You shouldn't be here." I realized then that fear was nothing. This forest, it was alive, watching, waiting. And maybe it wasn't just the forest. Maybe it was something older, something patient, something that had been here long before any of us arrived. I tried to leave. I thought if I stayed away, the crying would stop. But no matter where I went, I could feel it. The trees seemed to be following, just at the edge of vision. I could hear the faint, despairing sobs in the night air, drifting through the town like a secret song only I could hear, and I began to notice something else. The people who ventured too close rarely returned unchanged. Eyes hollow, whispers escaping lips they couldn't control, and a fear that never faded. My friends laughed at me when I mentioned it, but I saw it myself. Old man Harlan, who had lost his dogs, staring at the edge of the forest for hours, murmuring prayers under his breath. His wife shaking in the kitchen, eyes wide, refusing to speak. The forest was no longer a place. It was a presence, and I realized the crying wasn't just sound. It was a warning. And maybe, just maybe, it was too late for me to heed it. The days bled into each other, but the forest never stopped. Even in the sunlight, it seemed alive, its shadows moving in subtle ways, curling and twisting where they shouldn't. I tried to go about my life, tried to tell myself the sobbing. The faces in the trees were hallucinations, but denial is fragile when reality itself bends around you. I began keeping a notebook. Every sound, every movement, every whisper I noticed. I couldn't trust anyone in town to understand. The adults looked at me like I was crazy, and the younger ones, my peers, avoided me. But the forest noticed everything. It was Mrs. Harlan who first explained it to me, though she never fully looked me in the eyes. I had gone to her house one evening, determined to understand, to grasp anything concrete that could explain what was happening. "You shouldn't be asking questions," she said, her voice trembling. She sat in the corner of her living room, rocking slightly, staring at the floor. They don't like it when you pry." "Who?" I asked, but she didn't answer. She finally looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "The forest. It cries because it remembers. Every wrong done to this land, every life lost, every deal struck in shadows, it's all here. It's hungry, and it won't stop." I wanted to laugh, wanted to call her crazy, but her fear, it was infectious. And as I left, her parting words lingered. "It's patient, and it knows you." That night I lay awake, listening. The sobbing was closer, stronger. It sounded like hundreds of voices, all intertwined, all whispering the same thing. "We see you. We see you. You can't hide." I decided to explore deeper. Maybe understanding it would help. I followed the edge of the forest, moving slowly, careful, flashlight cutting narrow arcs of light through the darkness. The air smelled damp, earthy, but underneath it was something else, something metallic, like rust and old blood. Then I saw it. A small clearing ringed by ancient oaks. In the center, a circle of stones, worn and jagged as if the earth itself had been pierced. The sobbing came from there, a soft crescendo, almost musical. I stepped closer, and that's when I saw the first body. Not fully formed. Not alive, not dead, just a shape curled into the dirt, covered in moss and leaves. Pale skin peeked through, fingers twitching. I stumbled back, gagging, but the shape didn't move. It just stared at me, and then it whispered my name. I ran. The forest seemed to pulse with my fear, shadows elongating, branches grasping. I could feel it everywhere, pressing in, testing my resolve. When I reached home, I slammed the door behind me and locked it, but I knew the forest wasn't finished. Over the next weeks, the town's history became my obsession. I visited the library, dug through old newspapers, and questioned anyone who would speak. Every tale converged on the forest, like tributaries flowing into the same dark river. In the 1800s, settlers had buried their dead beneath the pines. Some of them, according to old letters, had made pacts with the land, offering lives, blood, sometimes their own children to appease whatever resided in those trees. Entire families vanished in the night, and no one ever spoke of them again. One entry caught my attention. A diary, faded and nearly illegible. "The trees remember. They take what is owed. I hear the crying even in my dreams. If you hear it, you are marked. There is no leaving, only waiting. The forest wasn't just a forest. It was a predator, patient and calculating. Then the micro-events began. Small things at first. Footsteps behind me when no one was there. Objects shifting slightly in my apartment. Doors that I was sure I had locked, found ajar. Shadows stretching where they shouldn't. I heard whispers in the dark, unintelligible, but terrifyingly urgent. I started recording everything, setting up cameras at the edge of the forest. Sometimes they captured nothing, but often, silhouettes appeared, flitting between trees, faces pressed against trunks, pale and desperate. I could see hands scratching at bark. Voices whispered in patterns that made no sense but sounded like warnings. Stay away, or they're coming, or simply, you will be next. I confronted one of the town elders, Mr. Crowley, about it. I found him sitting on his porch, chainsaw at his side, muttering to himself. They're watching, he said without looking at me. Always watching. You hear the crying? It's for all of us, all at once. Never think you can outrun it. Who is? I asked. What do they want? He shook his head, eyes blank. You're too late already. You'll see. The forest doesn't forget. The days became a blur of fear and paranoia. I saw my reflection in mirrors and didn't recognize myself. Hollow eyes, pale skin, twitching hands. Every night the sobbing drew closer, sometimes breaking into screams, sometimes into laughter, a cruel imitation of human voices. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and when I tried to speak to friends or family, they avoided my eyes, as if they already knew I was marked. The forest began to seep into my dreams. I would wake to find scratches on my arms, not from any branch, not from any physical source. Shadows moved in corners where light shouldn't reach. Sometimes I heard my own name spoken aloud, but when I turned, there was no one. I knew the forest had chosen me. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was personal. Every legend I uncovered, every diary I read, every missing person, it all pointed to the same truth. If you hear the crying, you are already part of it. There is no escape. Then came the first direct encounter. I returned to the clearing where I had seen the shape. My hand shook, breath ragged, flashlight cutting weak beams through the oppressive darkness. The sobbing was deafening now, echoing from every direction. And then I saw them, figures, pale and thin, faces twisted in eternal mourning, stepping from the shadows. Their mouths opened, but no sound came, only movement. They swirled around me, a silent storm of despair and accusation. You shouldn't be here, one of them whispered, finally audible. We told you. You ignored us. Now, you belong. I stumbled backward. My flashlight flickered. The air grew cold, thick with the scent of rot and decay. Shadows lengthened, bending reality around me. The ground seemed to pulse beneath my feet, almost as if the forest itself were alive, breathing, reaching. I ran, tripping over roots, branches whipping my face. The figures followed, emerging between the trees in impossible places. I could hear whispers in my own head now, overlapping with the cries in the forest. Run, hide, we see you. You can't leave. When I finally reached the edge of the forest, I paused, chest heaving. The sobbing didn't stop. I looked back. Shadows moved in the tree line, reaching, grasping as if trying to drag the world back into the forest's heart. I knew then that I could never escape it. Every story, every warning, every legend had been true. The forest doesn't forgive. The forest doesn't forget. The forest doesn't allow witnesses. I tried to warn others, posting online, knocking on doors, shouting to anyone who would listen. No one wanted to know. They avoided me, whispered behind my back, or laughed nervously. Maybe it was too late for them too. Maybe the forest had already marked them, silently, waiting. And then I began to see the patterns. The missing animals, the hollowed eyes of townspeople, the whispering shadows, the pale figures that emerged in the night. They weren't random. They were warnings, or punishments, or both. The forest had been patient for centuries, gathering its deads, silently waiting for anyone foolish enough to enter, to hear its cries, to see its secrets. And now I had. Every time I close my eyes, I see the clearing, the circle of stones, the shapes writhing in the dirt. I hear the sobbing. I hear the whispers. I hear my name, and I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that it is coming for me. I knew I had to return. There was no choice. The forest had claimed my nights, my thoughts, my sanity. Every whisper, every rustle, Every shadow clawing at the edges of my vision made one thing clear. The forest wasn't done with me. It never would be. I set out at dusk, flashlight in hand, the air thick and cold as if the trees exhaled frost. The sobbing began before I even reached the first line of pines, a low, keening sound that pierced the silence of the evening. Each step I took felt heavier, as if the ground itself resisted my passage. The clearing awaited, unchanged yet alien. The circle of stones lay at its center, jagged, blackened, and slick with dark moisture. Shadows writhed in impossible angles among the trees, and then I saw them. Figures, countless, pale, twisted, stepping out from behind trunks, their eyes hollow and pleading, mouths moving silently in agony. "Why are you here?" one whispered, voice a brittle fragment of sound that seemed to scratch against my skull. I had to understand," I stammered. My voice trembled, weak, lost in the roar of the sobbing. "You shouldn't have," they said in unison, voices merging into one chilling harmony of despair. The ground trembled beneath me, roots rising and twisting as if alive. Trees leaned inward, blocking the sky, forming a cathedral of shadow. I tried to run, but the roots tangled my feet. A windless gust slammed my chest, knocking me to the dirt. The sobbing crescendoed into shrieks, deafening and precise, punctuated by laughter that wasn't human. I scrambled to my knees, flashlight shaking, and caught movement at the edge of the clearing. A tree split open, its trunk peeling back like skin. A pale, emaciated figure emerged, its eyes locked on mine. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, and a scream ripped through me, not from its lungs, but from the forest itself, a resonance that reverberated in my bones. "Join us," it hissed. The voice was everywhere, inside my head, under my skin, pressing against my thoughts. "You belong here. You always belonged here." I forced myself to my feet and ran. Every shadow lunged at me. Every branch reached like arms, tearing at clothes, skin, hair. The sobbing followed, weaving into whispers that called my name, reciting secrets I hadn't shared aloud. The forest knew me. It had always known me. I reached the edge of the clearing again and paused. In the distance, faint light shimmered like hope. But the forest wasn't done. The air thickened, pressing down. My chest burned. My lungs screamed for air, and then the ground beneath me shifted. Roots twisting upward, forming grotesque faces that stared with hollow eyes and silent screams. I tripped and fell, my flashlight rolling away. Darkness enveloped me, absolute. The sobbing intensified, now layered with hundreds of voices speaking in tongues I couldn't understand, yet comprehended instinctively. The circle of stones glowed faintly, blood red, as if the forest itself pulsed with life. Figures emerged from the shadows, not walking, but sliding across the ground in unnatural motions, their pale hands outstretched. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. The forest took my voice. My limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. I watched helplessly as figures surrounded me, moving faster, closer, merging into one undulating mass of pale flesh and endless sorrow. "You see now," they whispered. Voices overlapping, merging, warping. "You can't leave. You never left. You are part of us." Panic clawed at me. I clawed at the dirt, trying to free myself, but the roots had me. My hands sank into the soil as if it were quicksand. Shadows closed in from every angle, bending reality. The trees twisted impossibly, forming corridors that looped back on themselves. The clearing was no longer a place. It was a trap, a living organism reshaping itself around my fear. I fell to my knees, gasping when I saw it, a massive, gnarled tree at the center, its bark slick with dark moisture, its branches stretching toward the sky like claws. Its trunk had faces pressed into it, screaming, silent, pleading. And at its base, a dark hollow pulsed, as if a heartbeat within the wood itself. From the hollow, a figure emerged, taller than any human, emaciated, its eyes black voids, mouth opening impossibly wide, exhaling the sobbing that had followed me all this time. Its limbs twisted in impossible ways, fingers elongating, grasping, reaching toward me. I tried to run, but the forest had me. It was everywhere. I felt myself being lifted, pulled by invisible hands into the center of the clearing. The stones beneath me burned my skin. The air was thick with whispers calling my failures, my fears, my sins. "Please, no," I gasped, but the voices drowned me. The figures circled, merging with shadows, becoming a mass of despair. I could see every missing animal, every vanished person, every soul the forest had claimed, faces pressed into bark, eyes wide in eternal horror. and now they were taking me. I felt myself rising, weightless, drawn toward the hollow of the central tree. Faces pressed against my vision. Whispers invaded my mind. You belong here. You always belonged. Pain shot through me, not from wounds, but from memory. Every fear, every regret, every sorrow amplified 1,000-fold. Time lost meaning. Seconds stretched into hours, minutes into eternities. I glimpsed scenes from the past, settlers burying the dead, families screaming in the night, blood dripping into the soil, promises made in shadows. The forest remembered it all. It never forgot. It demanded payment. A scream tore from my lips as I neared the hollow, a scream that wasn't entirely mine. Hands emerged from the soil, gripping my arms, legs, pulling me forward. I fought, but every movement was met with resistance, like wading through molasses made of shadows and pain. Please, leave me, I begged. The figures whispered my name, twisting it into a chant, a dirge, a curse, and then I saw it. A small clearing beyond the tree, bathed in faint moonlight. A single path, almost invisible, leading out. I thought it was salvation. But the forest laughed, or maybe it was the wind, or the voices, or the hollow itself. The path twisted, doubled back, looping into itself. Shadows blocked it. The figures reached for me. Whispers became screams. The tree pulsed, a heart of darkness drawing me closer. I screamed again, a scream of defiance, of terror, of despair. My hands clawed at the bark, my fingers slipping, tearing skin. Faces pressed into my vision, screaming, pleading, warning. The air thickened, crushing me. I could feel consciousness slipping, fading, and then suddenly a voice broke through, sharp, cutting, distinct. Stop! The whisper pierced the cacophony. Everything froze. The shadows recoiled, the figures halted mid-step. The forest trembled as if uncertain. The voice came again, louder, insistent. You have to see. You have to understand. I didn't know how, but I followed it. Eyes wide, chest burning, limbs heavy. The hollow pulsed. The tree leaned toward me, but the voice guided me, pulling me toward a small space between two twisted trunks. I crawled through almost blindly. For a moment the sobbing ceased. Silence, thick and oppressive, filled the forest. I emerged on the far edge, shaking, gasping, sweat soaking my clothes. The forest loomed behind me, dark and endless, but it had released me, for now. I fell to the ground, trembling, chest heaving. Faces pressed in my vision for a moment longer, then receded. Whispers faded. Shadows shrank. The path behind me seemed to stretch endlessly, trees bending in unnatural shapes as if watching, waiting. I was free, but not untouched. I had glimpsed the heart of the forest. I had touched its hunger, and I knew with bone-deep certainty it was patient, and it would return. The forest doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't release its prey willingly, and now I was marked. I don't remember how long I lay there at the edge of the forest, shivering, gasping, trying to convince myself I was alive. The moon had risen high, pale and indifferent, its light scattering across the twisted silhouettes of trees. The sobbing had stopped, or perhaps it had simply receded, waiting for another night, another victim. But silence didn't feel like relief. It felt like warning. The town was asleep, or pretending to be. Windows glimmered faintly, streetlights flickered. I wanted to go home, wanted to tell someone, anyone, what had happened. But words failed me. My throat ached, raw from screams I didn't know I had uttered. My mind raced, a storm of fragmented memories. Faces pressed into bark, pale figures whispering, the tree with its hollow, the ceaseless, deafening sobbing. I staggered through the streets, avoiding every shadow. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't trust anyone. The forest had taught me that. You can't share what you've seen without inviting disbelief or worse, inviting the forest's attention through others. Days passed, and life, or what passed for life, resumed, but everything was different. I moved through the town like a ghost, unnoticed yet hyper-aware. The townspeople kept their distance. Some avoided my gaze entirely. Others whispered behind closed doors. I didn't ask why. Some things aren't meant to be explained. Some horrors are too old, too patient, to be understood by ordinary minds. I tried to occupy myself with work, with routines, with the mundane. But the forest was never far. At night I could hear it, faint, distant, like water lapping at a shore I could never reach. A sob, a whisper, a voice calling my name just as I drifted to sleep. Sometimes I woke with scratches on my arms, pale and shallow, as if tiny fingers had traced them in the dark. I began keeping notes again, documenting every detail, every whisper, every shadow that moved unnaturally. Perhaps I hoped that writing it down would exorcise it, capture it on paper so I could contain it. But the forest cannot be contained. Every word I wrote felt like an acknowledgement, a connection, a thread linking me to its patient, eternal hunger. I visited the edge of the forest once, months later. The air was cold, unnaturally so, and the trees seemed to lean toward me, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes. I felt their gaze, their patience, their remembrance. The circle of stones glimmered faintly in the moonlight. I didn't step closer. I didn't need to. The forest had left its mark on me, deep and permanent. I thought about the missing people, the animals, the vanished families. I thought about Mrs. Harlan, Mr. Crowley, everyone who had lived too close or listened too intently. The forest was older than the town, older than the mountains, older than memory. It didn't forgive and it didn't forget. And now I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. It was not just a place of trees. It was an intelligence, a predator, a collector of souls, and I had become one of its witnesses. I tried to tell people what I knew. I tried to warn them. But even when I spoke, my words sounded hollow, disconnected, almost like echoes of someone else's memory. People nodded politely, smiled, and walked away. Some laughed nervously. Others glanced at me like I was a sickness, contagious and invisible. No one would listen. And I realized, with cold clarity, that no one ever would. Sometimes at night, I think I see them, figures in the corner of my vision, pale and twisted, pressing through the walls of my home as if the forest had grown within it. I hear the whispers, the soft pleading, the warnings I cannot fully understand. And when I close my eyes, the circle of stones appears, the central tree looming impossibly high, the hollow pulsing like a heart of darkness. And I am there again, helpless, gasping, reaching for air that isn't mine. I have tried to avoid it, avoid the path of the forest. But it finds me, always. Dreams are the easiest way, the most patient. A faint whisper while I lie in bed, a shadow that lingers too long in the corner of my eye, a memory I cannot unremember. The forest does not need to be near. It only needs me to remember it. I have changed. My friends notice it when they do see me, though few do. My eyes are darker, my hands tremble without reason, and sometimes my voice carries a strange resonance, faintly echoing the cries I heard in the trees. I speak less. I watch more. I listen constantly. The forest has taught me to survive through caution, through awareness, through understanding the patience of predators older than time. And yet, despite knowledge, despite vigilance, despite my desperate routines, I know I am not safe. The forest waits and it is patient. One day, perhaps not tonight, perhaps not tomorrow, it will come again. It always does. Some nights I sit by my window, staring into the edge of the forest, listening to the faint sighs, the subtle creaks, the whispers that curl around my ears. And I know I will never escape it. I am tied to it now, irrevocably, eternally. My life is no longer my own. I carry the memory of it, the awareness of it, and the understanding that one day it may claim me fully. The forest is quiet now, but silence is not peace. Silence is waiting. Silence is patience. Silence is hunger restrained only by its own will. And I hear it in the wind, in the trees, in the night air, soft, low, endless. Sometimes I think I hear it crying for me, and when I close my eyes, I see them again. Faces pressed into bark, pale figures with hollow eyes moving slowly, inexorably, the circle of stones glowing faintly in the darkness. The central tree pulsing, breathing, waiting, always waiting. I have survived, for now, but the forest does not forget, and it will not forgive. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I hear a single whisper through my window. We see you, and I know I always will.